Welcome to the Jasmine Dragon. The Jasmine Dragon is Uncle Iroh's tea shop that he opened in Ba Sing Se, where we, the Avatar fans, got a look at what a domestic tea shop AU Zuko would be like. Wow, what a delight. And so I couldn't help but be inspired to draw my own version of the Jasmine Dragon. So today we'll be going through the process of this painting in a pretty chill way and chatting about Avatar, which is kind of a hot topic at this moment. So in total, this painting took about 14 to 15 hours. You know, the good thing about recording your process is that it really makes you reflect on how much time you spent on each painting. So for example, I realized that something like this takes around 7 hours and something like this takes around 24. So I think 14 to 15 hours is a good medium. I was trying to go a little bit slower than usual and be more careful at each step, because there were certain techniques that I wanted to try out that I had never really tried out before. So specifically for this painting, I wanted to kind of like overcome my fear of color and light. You know, I'm pretty confident in my like drawing skills, but it also causes me to be like over reliant on them sometimes. I've just kind of been defaulting to cell shading everything, and I kind of know, I can feel it. In order to reach the next step as an artist, I need to deal with this specific aspect of art. So Avatar, I've chosen you to help me overcome this fear. I am going to become the Avatar of art. I'm going to collect the art fundamentals like the Avatar is collecting elements, okay? So back to what we're seeing on screen, you can see a very rough thumbnail underneath, and I'm just cleaning up the thumbnail on top. And that was definitely not the first thumbnail I made. The process was very messy, very indecisive. You know, when it comes to a cast like Avatar's cast, it's like the important part is deciding how they're all going to be interacting with each other. Who's sitting next to who? Who's talking to who? Who's saying what? Like, what are they doing? You know, I love thinking about that stuff. So I spent a long time playing with different possibilities. For some reason, in all of them, Toph was reading the menu. And as you can see on the left here, there is an image that I have created of me doing all these characters' poses, because at a certain point as an illustrator, you kind of realize that you don't know jack shit. So if you want to be able to execute a piece, get as much reference as possible. And since I'm like the only person here, I have to essentially be everyone. So I like the idea of Aang being at the head of the table and Katara and Suki kind of facing towards him, and these guys are the studying group. Okay, my headcanon is that they just came back from school and they're hanging out at the tea shop to get some work done. Well, at least Katara is, because Aang certainly isn't doing work, and Suki, I think she's just here for the tea, literally and metaphorically. And then Toph, Sokka, and Zuko are kind of having their own little conversation. I'm pretty sure Toph is just being a menace right now, and Sokka and Zuko are kind of falling victim to her shitposting. Okay, I'm gonna answer a very common question that happened when I posted this. Is Toph reading? Can Toph read? Guys, if you commented this, I just want to let you know that if you ever met Toph, she would absolutely eviscerate you. You would become dust in her presence. You would not survive a single second. So yeah, I hope that answers your questions. Back to what we're seeing on screen, I'm just testing out the lighting situation with values first. And this is really where I'm starting to get into a process that I don't use normally. I'm trying a lot more this time to think about light in a very logical, literal sense. You know, when you draw anime style and cel shading, light just kind of becomes like very symbolized instead of something that you truly understand. So, you know, I watched a few Cynics videos, I watched some Markubuki videos about light and painting and ambient light and whatever, and I'm trying to apply all those things here. Trying to think very logically about where light would fall, how it would fall, what is casting light, how is light bouncing everywhere, and whatever. And then I merge all of that together and we get into line art, which is my favorite part of the drawing process. The challenge for me here is to not over rely on the line art, which I tend to do. but I don't know, this process is just so satisfying for me. And while we watch me do line art and subsequently color blocking, since there's nothing really mysterious going on there, I guess I can address some more pressing comments that I got surrounding this piece. Aside from Toph like holding the menu and being blind, why is she wearing shoes? The answer to that is I just love drawing sneakers. Also, like, if this is a modern AU, guys, listen, if it's a modern AU, if powers don't exist here, would Toph really be running barefoot in the wild, like, on the city street? If you answered yes, then I guess it's a good thing that I'm the one drawing this, because not in my universe. She is not allowed to let those dogs out. In a restaurant, another reason is that I think, like, the basketball, like, aesthetic suits Toph. She's kind of just like a jock. She may be blind, but she will bully you and put your head in the toilet and flush it. That said, if this is a modern AU but powers still kind of exist, which later we can kind of talk about because I draw some details that imply that they may. So let's assume powers do exist and that bending exists. Sorry, not powers, bending. Then I don't really have an excuse for you. I just think that, you know, this is my universe, okay? In my universe, Toph is still blind, but maybe she can deal with having shoes. Like, I don't want those dogs to be out in my universe's restaurant. Maybe she has them on for courtesy and she has kicked out the bottom. That's disgusting, but it's at least better than having your bare ass toes out. Alright, now we've reached the point in the illustration process where I have absolutely no idea what's going on. Yes, there comes a time for every single illustration where you know that there is a way to finish this. But from the point you are currently to the end, there's just like a very murky swamp where you're like, I have no idea what is gonna go on in this mysterious area. It's always like after you finish color blocking and it's like, okay, what do I do now? This is obviously not finished, but we have to do something in order to make it finished. So I attempt a lot of different things. I go in with some gradients and shadows, but it's still not looking finished. So that is when I accept my fate and finally understand that, yeah, it's about time to just start adding details, I think. Sometimes when I feel confused and lost in illustration, you just start adding stuff, which is why a lot of my illustrations end up characters in extremely chaotic and busy scenes. I'll be working on this. I'm not sure what the happy medium is, but this was looking very empty to me, so I decided to start populating the table with a bunch of props. I remember hearing on an illustration podcast someone saying that creating an illustration, like the elements within the illustration and the composition, is like making a theater set. It's like setting the stage, essentially. And I would agree with that. I think when it comes to my illustrations, my more complex ones, I like to think about it like a snapshot of a moment in time. Everyone's kind of like in the middle of doing something. You know, Aang is in the middle of feeding Appa a little snack. Suki is in the middle of chewing and eating a bun. Katara is in the middle of studying and probably lecturing Aang on something. Toph is in the middle of being a menace. Sokka is in the middle of once again forgetting that she is actually blind. And Zuko is in the middle of being confused and setting down a cup. And then the things on the table should represent like a state of chaos that indicate that they have recently been used. Like when I'm thinking about illustration, I think about the before and then the will be. So for example, a bunch of piled up plates next to Toph. This indicates that Toph has been ordering a ton of food and eating a ton of food, and most likely anything that Zuko is delivering to the table, Toph is ordering. And yeah, at this point I decided to completely redo Sokka. The way I drew him was bothering me the entire time. I was just kind of like guessing on him. The fur-lined denim jacket wasn't looking correct. His pose, I didn't do that in the original reference photo, so I was kind of just guessing. He just seemed kind of wrong. So I redid him completely, and maybe he actually became a little bit too detailed afterwards, but that's fine. It's better than what it was before. And thus we enter another phase of just color blocking and rendering. So it's a good time to address yet another question I kept getting. Where is Momo? For this one, I really don't have a good answer. I did not know that Momo was so important to so many people. If I knew, I really would have put him in there. Momo is currently a pin on Aang's backpack, but I saw a lot of people saying that Momo should have been a cat. I have never seen art of Momo as a cat before. I was kind of thinking that like he could just stay as like a lemur or whatever he is right now. Like Appa is a bison, so he really has to be a dog in order for this to happen. But Momo is just a lemur, and you know, he can exist as a lemur. He doesn't have to be a cat. Oh my god, I'm just remembering watching this time lapse. If you look right next to Aang, originally Momo was gonna be a pencil case, and then I realized that that was really morbid, so I decided to change him to a strap on his backpack. Yes, I will formally apologize for not including Momo. At this point, the piece is coming together pretty well. I'm starting to see the end of the tunnel, but it's still kind of lacking some spice, lacking a little bit of story, a little bit of specificity, so I'm changing the teacups to turtle duck desserts. I was just looking at so many like dim sum desserts, and I was like, maybe Iroh is like specially made this a menu item for Zuko. As we all know, Zuko loves turtle ducks. Then I go around adding graphics to everyone's t-shirts and clothing. It was going pretty well until I reached Aang. I really couldn't figure out a good way to put a graphic on his shirt that would be readable. It was supposed to be the air temple that he's from, kind of like a travel-y graphic sort of looking thing, but I just really couldn't get it right. And from here on out, it's kind of like a race to the end. This is my second favorite part after line art. Eventually I can just merge everything and start rendering on top. That's kind of the ultimate goal here. So I'm making a pattern for the floor. I want it to be tiled. My main reference is the one you see on the left. I added glass to the tabletop. This was something I'm really proud of. In my quest to understand color, light, texture, surface, material, I think adding glass to the surface of this table was like a major personal accomplishment. I feel really proud. And then I start working on the background. The idea is to make it as low contrast as possible, but to give indication of the direction that the light is coming in. Otherwise, there's like not much proof that these people are existing in a space, like a real space. I was actually amazed that it all came together with like very little problems. I was kind of like afraid that the background was gonna throw me off, but it didn't. So from here on out, I could tell it was going to be a smooth ride to the end. And I started adding more details, especially to, you know, what Katara is working on in her notebook and what Aang is working on in his notebook. So Katara actually is studying waterbending techniques, so that implies that powers do exist in this world. And Aang is just doodling. So one last thing to chat about while I just render all these details. The live action is kind of a hot topic right now, right? Do I have an opinion? Not really. I haven't tried watching it all the way through. I have kind of like skimmed episode 1 and 2. I'm not really interested in reliving the Avatar experience. I think that the animated version was probably peak, and there's not really any way for me to feel like that again, no matter what they do. So I don't really have anything against it. Probably just not for me. I'm an animation nerd, just like animated stuff. And yep, it looks like I've merged all the layers and am now just doing all the final rendering. Something I did change after posting this on Instagram, someone suggested that I make Toph's menu upside down. I thought that was such a good idea. So I changed that after I posted on Instagram, and then I posted that on Reddit. So there's like 2 versions of this out there. This art actually got a lot of love on Reddit, but I have stopped reading the comments because Reddit kind of terrifies me. But it is a great way to like reach the people who specifically like this thing. But I just know there's probably so much debate in the comments about exactly what I talked about in this video. And in some ways, I find it really fun to read people's interpretations of this art. Like, I kind of don't want to say too much because I think that art is created by the artist and finished by the person who sees it. So if you think that Maybe the menu has Braille on it and Toph is actually reading the Braille. Then that's valid. Or if you think that Momo is just like hiding under the table somewhere, yeah, that's valid too. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about my art process. And if you have a different interpretation as to what's going on in this image, that is completely fine with me. That is what art is. If there was just one interpretation of everything, how boring would life be? Please let me know if you find these types of videos interesting. I have been a little bit aversive about sharing like specific art related videos, like me drawing stuff, because I just don't think that people would find it interesting. But if you did, then I would love to be proven wrong. So yeah, let me know. And just a small plug, this process video was posted in full on Patreon about a month ago, so that is where the tea is if you want to get PSDs and process videos and other videos that I may make. You can check it out there.